Hi there, I'm Rob McCoy of Ram Communications. We're going to try something new today. I'm very excited to introduce you to my friend Griffin McDonald. He is an insurance expert. And why are we going to talk about insurance, Rob? Well, here's why we're going to talk about that. Among other things, Griffin specializes in cybersecurity insurance. So, in past videos, I've talked to you folks about the merits of cybersecurity. We've done a lot about the do's and the don'ts and things that you want to do, things that you want to avoid, so that your business is as protected as possible. But we're going to do something a little bit unique today because Griff is an expert on the insurance side. We're going to talk to Griff and get into some more detail on why your organization needs to pay attention to cybersecurity insurance and why you need an expert like Griff.
Appreciate you having me, Rob. It's not often people let me talk about insurance because people tend to find the subject relatively boring, and it's not something that they want to deal with more than once or twice a year. But this in particular is a subject that I think a lot of people are missing the mark on, specifically in the small to mid-sized business space. When you get to your list of insurance coverages and you're working through your policies with your broker at your inevitable renewal date, everyone's focused on the comp and the general liability and the property, and the cyber insurance coverage is down at the bottom of the list. And
Sure.
unfortunately, when we start getting to the bottom of the list, that's where people start feeling they can start making cost savings. And so we start to see the cyber insurance fall by the wayside on the bottom of the list. We did a study back in 2022 in the insurance industry, and we found that only about 19% of businesses have $600,000 or more in cyber coverage. And it sounds like a lot, but it's really not when it comes to a cyber event. Any sort of cyber coverage is about 55% of all businesses out there. And those are typically throw-in policies that come with their standard general liability. So it's something that's severely underinsured in the industry.
Okay.
In 2022, there was about 7.6 billion dollars in total premiums paid to cyber insurance, and we're expecting by 2027 there to be closer to about 20.5 billion. So it's growing. We're seeing a lot of companies inquire about it, and unfortunately, that's because either they're in the process of going through a cyber event, or they're seeing it. It appears to be something that you're seeing more and more on the news. And you're seeing a lot of
Sure.
people dealing with it. So it's a coverage that's good to talk about. It's a coverage that a lot of people don't understand, and there's a lot of facets to it.
So let me ask you something. So you mentioned that's a nice stat, 7.6 billion just in 2022. So from your perspective, if I'm in business today and I'm thinking about trying to up my game and cover my assets, are the insurance companies fairly loose and accommodating on their coverage requirements? Or are you finding that insurance companies are getting more strict as time goes on, if and when I want cybersecurity coverage?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I would say it's changed a lot in the last couple of years. 2, 3, 4 years ago, you could get a cyber policy with a one-sheet application. We fill it out, we send it back, and there's certain credentials that put you into certain preferred carriers. Otherwise, we would go to a different carrier and provide that coverage. In the last year or so, we're starting to see the restrictions tighten significantly.
And why is that?
The big one is MFA, multi-factor authentication. Carriers want to see it, and they want to see it on every login that you have. And it's a big thing that people, when they fill out their cyber insurance applications, don't necessarily understand, whether it's because they don't have a fleshed out IT department or they're using a third party vendor. And so they're checking boxes on their cyber application saying they have this stuff, and they don't. And it opens them to liability from the carrier's perspective. The other thing that carriers are doing now that they haven't been doing historically is they're going into your websites, they're going into your online footprint, and they are poking and prodding and testing it, and they
Really?
provide reports back to you. And this is one of the benefits of applying for cyber insurance. They provide these reports that identify weaknesses in your cybersecurity program, and make recommendations to it. And some of those are recommendations, and some of those are necessities to get coverage. So
Okay.
the nice thing about cyber insurance is, for the large majority of companies, your small to mid-size, it's a relatively affordable policy. I mean, it's one of those that people cut costs with, but it's not the place to cut costs. I mean, the reality is the premium for these policies, if you have basic to above basic level protections in place, it's a relatively affordable policy. In some instances, we're talking under $10,000. And the reality is that you're not just getting coverage, you're getting a whole bunch of resources. And so that's why when these carriers are vetting the companies upon which they want to insure, they're taking a little more of a due diligence approach because the claims are on the rise, and in order to protect the premiums for everyone, they have to make sure that the companies that they're bringing in to cover are not predispositioned to a loss that could potentially happen.
Okay. So let's role play a little bit. Let's just say I don't know what I don't know,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
I run a successful business, and just for example's sake, I'm a distributor. I've been doing this 30, 40 years. It's been in the family. Boy, we know this. We eat and breathe it every day. Yeah, Griff, I use some computers. We've got some accounting now online, I'm told, but we're not techie. We're not making software, and we're not online poking things all the time. I can barely get a driver to use an iPhone.
Yeah.
I got drivers that are still on flip phones. So do I, what's my exposure? Why should I not just sit here and cross my arms and just say, I'll get to this later? Why should my particular business make this kind of coverage a priority?
Let me give you some basic loss scenarios that we're seeing with our small business clients. The first one being you show up, all your stuff is locked out. You can't get into any of your systems. You can't get your billing. You can't get into your emails. You can't get into any of it. You got a note on your, and it's a joke, but it's got the funny little letters and numbers cut from the magazine saying you owe us $50,000 and we'll unlock your system. That's happening to small businesses, and they target small businesses because they know small businesses will pay it. They know that they won't have to go through the regulations and some of the hurdles and dealing with law enforcement presence that you would have if you went after a large business. If you're containing any sort of your customers' billing information, any sort of sensitive information as it relates to driver's license of your current employees, you open yourself up to a liability if that data becomes compromised, and you are now on the hook for the liability associated with providing those people with security moving forward, any sort of financial loss that they receive as an outgrowth of that. And the big one is we're seeing a lot of clients whom email systems are being compromised, and bad actors sending out an email to previous clients saying, we've changed our banking information, wire us our next check at this amount.
Wow.
We had a client who has recently, and again, without giving too much details, received a notification from one of their suppliers that they had changed their banking information, wired $1.2 million to somebody overseas.
The bank did.
No, well, they utilized their bank
Okay.
through a wire transfer, sent it to what they thought was somebody whom they had been paying for 20 plus years, and it was not them. And the reality is that person, had they had cyber coverage, would have had some semblance of something to step in and provide some, compensation for that loss, but they didn't have the right coverages in place. And, it wasn't any outgrowth of anything their agent did. It was just a byproduct of choosing not to take coverages that are reasonable and measured for the business world today. So those are three big scenarios
Okay.
where you could easily get tagged as a small business. The other aspect to it that is important is, and I would argue more important than the actual protections themselves, you have a cyber loss, you show up to work for one day or one reason or another, and you walk in and all your stuff you know, is compromised in some form or fashion. Who do you call? Are you going to call the cops? Are you going to call your IT department? If you have one, most small businesses don't. Some
Sure.
small business utilize a third-party vendor. You might call them, but they're not going to respond in any form or fashion. The value of the insurance policy is in the response to the cyber event that you're inevitably going to have, because they have, whether it's in-house or they vend it out to a third party who specializes in that type of exposure, they have resources for you in the event that you are experiencing a cyber loss that can move quickly, because it's like that TV show, The First 48, right? And the sooner you respond and the sooner you engage
Right.
with whatever the cyber event is, the better chance to reduce the monetary loss associated with it.
So are you saying worst case scenario, we have a compromise, You're sending me resources to help me recover
Correct.
from the incident?
So the insurance carrier whom your
Okay.
cyber is with will respond, in some sort of emergency 24-hour fashion to assist you in the recovery of data, in any sort of income that's lost as an outgrowth of your compromised system. Some carriers even have PR teams that will step in should you need, if you're a larger business, these are coverages that are more applicable. But there's a PR element to a cyber event as well, where you have to get out in front of the public and more importantly, your customers. The reality, Rob, is most businesses, small to mid-size, don't recover from a cyber attack. The average cyber claim is about $635,000. And so, that's a big bill to front if you don't have the right coverages in place. It's hard to recover from it.
Not to mention the PR damage.
Exactly.
Oh,
Once you
yeah.
lose trust with the companies in which you engage business with, it's really difficult to come back from that.
Right. This makes sense to me, Griff. So I'm taking a deep breath. Okay. If I want to pursue coverage, what am I in store for? What are the basic things that my team and I need to be prepared to do if we're seeking this kind of insurance coverage?
Yeah. So in a best case scenario, if we're taking a long-term outlook on our insurance program, not 30 days before the renewal like most people
Yeah.
do, we want to clean up our digital footprint. We want to clean up our cybersecurity practices. The big one, we discussed this previously, we want to make sure we have MFA on everything. And you would be surprised how long it takes a company to implement MFA and make the large sweeping changes that come with that. The other big thing we're doing with our clients, and we're doing internally as well, we actually had a phishing attack last week and successfully thwarted it off. But as an outgrowth, our HR department politely reminded us that everyone needs to retake their cybersecurity training seminars. And we have 3 or 4 programs. They're about 30 minutes apiece. And every employee is required to sit down and go through those and learn the different types of cyber attacks, how to avoid them, how not to click on the links that come in the emails, and really create a cyber culture where everyone is actively engaged. We want to install strong antivirus softwares, and we want to make sure we're backing up and patching our systems on a timely basis. We want to understand the different types of threats that are out there so that we know what we're looking for. And this is all part of creating an actively engaged security and cyber culture. The big thing is we want to create an incident response, and we can help our clients with that if they don't have one. In the event the cyber attack happens, how do we respond? Who's the first person we call, and what are we doing with our clients? What are we doing with our current employees and their computers? I mean, people have access from 1,000 different directions. Sometimes
Sure.
you have computers out in the field. Sometimes you have computers in the office. And how are we communicating? In the event our entire email system is compromised, how do we communicate with our employees in a timely fashion? These are all parts of having a good cybersecurity footprint. And what that does is when we do go to the marketplace, it puts us in a leveraged position to not only get favorable premiums, but get better coverages. Because quite frankly, you can get certain coverages for cyber, but the better your cybersecurity profile is, the broader the coverages you can get are. You can get higher limits, you can get lower deductibles, and these are all things that impact the cost. Once you do that, you're going to engage with your broker. You're going to go through a marketing process, hopefully around your renewal date. There's going to be applications. There's going to be a phone call set up between the carrier and the business owner. And so that they'll go through a process of really understanding what you guys have in terms of a cyber footprint and a cyber program currently. The big thing, and I mentioned this before, is whomever is engaged in your IT, whether it's internal or an external company, you want them engaged in the cyber process, because we want to make sure that the answers we're providing, it's a tough subject, right?
Yeah.
A lot of business owners don't know the minutia or the day-to-day of their security
Sure.
systems for their online cyber activity. And so you want to make sure that we're giving thoughtful, well educated answers that are correct to the carriers so that they can make recommendations in turn to us, and we can work together to create. It's a partnership. People look at the engagement with insurance carriers as adversarial at times
Mhm.
because, oh, the premiums go up, or, oh, they're cutting my coverages. The insurance carriers have a vested interest in their clients being as best in class in whatever coverage it is as possible. And they have a wealth of resources that come with the insurance coverages they provide you. And unfortunately, a lot of businesses, they'll buy the coverages begrudgingly, and they don't want to engage with the carrier to actively create goodwill. And what happens is then in the event that you do have a loss, when we go to the renewal the next couple of years after that, we can say, yes, we had a loss, but look at all the things we've done. Look at all the programs and procedures we've put in place.
Right.
And it's all about creating good marketability in the insurance marketplace.
Okay. So as my liaison, I think I know some of this, but for our audience's benefit, as my liaison, what's the value? What are the specific benefits you're bringing to me as opposed to, and I may be dropping the wrong name, but as opposed to me just going directly to Safeco
Yeah.
or Hanover, whomever, and just taking my chances directly with the insurance company.
So a lot of insurance carriers, won't necessarily deal directly. So you're getting a limited pool of cyber markets whom will engage with you directly. But the reality is that our process, transparently from the agency side, we engage with basically what is a broker for brokers, right? So we have a cyber broker who markets your account on our behalf, because not all agencies have access to every cyber carrier. It's just not a fruitful relationship. You don't get economies of scale. But our relationship with our cyber brokers allows us to touch a lot of markets. And that's helpful, especially in the cyberspace, because there's such a broad spectrum of risk profiles, if you will, for prospective clients, right?
Sure.
Some clients
Depending on the
have
industry.
absolutely nothing.
Right.
And other clients have a million risks and they got everything in place. And so there's, along with their risk profiles, there's a lot of carriers out there whom will engage in different subjects. And so the nice thing about having a broker is, he knows, you receive the expertise on where you should be going with your business profile, right? If you just submit it to a cookie cutter template type insurance carrier online, you might be getting coverage, but you might not be getting the coverage you need. And it takes an assessment of your business, an assessment of your online footprint, like the example you gave. You could have a business who just has their email system online and maybe a phone system integrated into that. And then you could have hospitals or attorney firms or large volume staffing agencies where everything is being done online, and they have much more exposure and therefore require different coverages, different limits, and different levels of increased deductibles and that kind of stuff to offset some of the costs associated with their large cyber policy cost.
What else should we know? Obviously, this is an introduction for our audience, but what else should they know in terms of just taking first steps or next steps?
I think the first step would be asking your insurance broker to complete a proactive review of your cyber insurance policy currently, right? Do we have one? Is it a throw-in coverage with one of our other carriers? Is it a specified policy that is geared towards our specific cyber insurance needs? And then the next question is, what are the limits and are they still adequate? Because the reality is the costs of these claims are going up every year. And where previously you might have had $1 million limit on your cyber insurance policy, you might need 2 million or 3 million or 4 million now. It's just the reality of it. And the underlying aspects to your cyber policy might have changed in the last couple of years. So doing a review of your cyber insurance, if you have it, is a good start. If you don't have it, I would recommend putting it in place. I want to re-echo the sentiment that this is not an expensive coverage. In certain situations,
compared to not having it.
Well, compared to not having it, when you don't have it and you need it, it's an invaluable coverage.
Right.
When you have it, it's typically affordable unless you have some extenuating circumstance that puts you in a high risk cyber activity, and then all the more reason you need it. I mean, it's as important to your insurance profile as your workers' compensation policy or your auto policy.
Okay.
You wouldn't drive vehicles around out on the road without auto insurance. You should not be engaging on online activities without cyber insurance. It's just that cut and dry.
Griff, appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate the time.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank Griff for his time here today. If you have any questions about what we covered here, contact me anytime. I'll get you in touch with Griff. I will also leave you with Griff's contact information at the end of the video here. Thanks for your time and have a great day.